What is up guys, it is Ross and welcome back to another Mario Kart Wii Limitless vehicle showcase and developer commentary. In this episode we will be going over the Phantom. And the Phantom is a pretty special vehicle in Mario Kart Wii Limitless because, well, simply put, it's just a generic outside drifting bike. The Phantom... oh, excuse me, let me just scratch my nose there. It's basically Limitless's answer to vanilla Shooting Star. Shooting Star, if you're aware, it has the really long mini turbo stat. That was actually somewhat of a reference to Rebalanced, right? The mod that Limitless was inspired by. Shooting Star was such an iconic vehicle, so we decided to keep its identity mostly the same in Limitless, but we turned it into outside drift because Quacker already covered the inside drift niche. But now that Shooting Star was defined by its super long mini turbo boosts, there was something of a demand for a vehicle based on vanilla Shooting Star to be present in Mario Kart Wii Limitless, because those didn't exist in Rebalanced. Rebalanced wasn't very kind to outward drifting bikes. And outward drifting bikes, they're not the most popular vehicles in Mario Kart Wii, but there is an underground fan base for them, I can tell you that much. As an outside drift bike enjoyer myself, you know, we love some outside drift representation. Initially, people wanted Shooting Star to get reworked to be like its vanilla counterpart. Nice blue dodge. But we eventually decided to compromise and transfer its stats over to Phantom. And personally, I think Phantom does... I fumbled the power dodge somehow. Personally, I think that Phantom carries that identity really well. It drives very smoothly, just like Shooting Star does in vanilla. It's obviously a heavyweight, so the muscle memory shouldn't take too long to transfer. But yeah, it handles really nice, the drift is responsive, the handling is decent. Not really much else to say about the identity, because it quite literally exists just so that people who like outside drifting bikes in vanilla can have like a vehicle that represents them. It's kind of like Flame Runner for inside drift bikes, Flame Flyer for karts, and Jet Setter for auto vehicles. So onto this thing's stats. Statistically, this thing is also based on vanilla Shooting Star, believe it or not. Really good top speed. It's very close to the Flame Runner in top speed. However, it's kind of like Shooting Star in vanilla when it comes to its dynamic with Flame Runner. It's less speed oriented in exchange for mini turbo, but in Limitless that dynamic is it's much less skewed, basically. Like, Phantom is much closer in speed to Flame Runner than Shooting Star was in vanilla, and I think the mini turbo difference is just as big. Wow, that is... what a way to fail that, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, it's close in speed, it's close in mini turbo to Flame Runner. Its acceleration is better than Flame Runner's, but its weight is slightly lower. Again, that's a dynamic that was present with Shooting Star in vanilla. It had more acceleration than Flame Runner, but it was lighter than Flame Runner, which means that Phantom is more resistant against items, but less resistant against bumps. However, there's a bit of a twist on that. Phantom is obviously a very large vehicle, right? Which means that it's actually easier to clip it with items, which means that it will be needing that acceleration crutch a lot. And even then, its acceleration is better than the Flame Runners, but it's still like painfully average in the grand scheme of things. Like, I'll see if I can show it off here real quick. Oh, there's a green shell, how perfect. Yeah, this thing's acceleration isn't that good. You pretty much need to abuse Drift Excel to get any significant value out of it. But, although it's lighter than Flame Runner, you can potentially be more of a menace when it comes to bumps with it. because Phantom's mini turbo is just high enough that you can snake in condensed spaces without having to worry about losing too much ground on people. Obviously, wheeling is the preferred method to go fast, but Phantom has enough mini turbo that you can snake if you want to be sturdier in pack interactions, and you still have a lot of speed to it. You have a lot of juice to fall back on, if that makes sense. And then finally, its off-road is pretty much identical to vanilla, and although Phantom drifts tighter, I think, than Flame Runner does, it's outside drift, so it's not really comparable. You know, like, it can do... outside drift can do some stuff inside drift can. Inside drift can do stuff that outside drift can. You know, there's apples to oranges, there's no real... oh my god. Apples to oranges, there's no point in comparing them, really. Oh yeah, I forgot to talk about its handling. Its handling is much higher than Flame Runner's, but because it's outside drift, it actually uses the handling stat. Flame Runner hardly ever uses its handling, so that advantage doesn't really mean much, but I guess it's important to know. The handling is pretty much there just to make Phantom easier to adjust to for those that aren't accustomed to outside drift. Like, Limitless does its best to try and make a compromise between people who like the vehicles on a technical level and people who wish to use the vehicles on like a foundational level. And I think with Phantom we have struck a fairly nice balance, I think. There was one point in Limitless's development where outside drift bike representation was pretty bleak. Because I think back in like Season 1 and Season 2, not many people used outside drift bikes because they felt a bit too different from vanilla. And in recent patches we have attempted to correct that. Like, obviously you still have your silly vehicles like the standard bikes and Sugar Scoot and Bit Bike. They were basically the only outside drift bikes that did see use in the earlier seasons, and they still see use now. But it's nice that the more sort of bog standard vanilla outside drift bikes like Zip Zip, Standard Bike L, and Phantom have their own dedicated player base too. You love to see it. Obviously, Phantom's high drift means that you can make turns like that very well. That turn, that 90-degree turn, is one that catches a lot of players off guard, so it's good that Phantom has the mobility needed to take that turn nicely. Although you do need to be a good map reader as well, like you have to sort of know that that turn's coming looking at the minimap. In general, Phantom just has the mobility to tackle just about any situation you can throw at it. Which is nice, like it gives players that want a fast, well-rounded front-running vehicle something to sink their teeth into, basically. Oh, that's fine, we bluff those out. Oh, I hit the wall there. That's a good showcase of Phantom's large size, meaning that you can often just clip walls. You have to be pretty careful when driving this thing because its size can often be its downfall. Like I've said, you can weaponize its size by like snaking back and forth, but there are moments where its hitbox can just cripple it. Let's see if I can show this off real quick. What a snipe. But yeah, let's see if I can show this off real quick actually. It's important for the Phantom lore. A star, I'm not even going to bother using this, that's not what I want at all. What's the point in showing off this thing's hit-taking ability if you're just going to make me invincible, you know? I don't want to enable creative mode, what the hell? So yeah, I got wheelie bumped. You do sort of have to still keep an eye on it, but Phantom, you know, you can snake and still... you can snake and still keep up relatively decent ground. I know showing this off against CPUs is like... it's like proving that a tortoise can win a race against a snail, but like, in actual races, that you do get legitimate value out of it. And obviously, being immune to wheelie bumps is nice. Like, that's such a huge convenience to have. It's a huge convenience to have on a bike with as large of a hitbox and as lackluster of an acceleration game as Phantom does. It's a nice defensive option, to be sure, for a vehicle that oftentimes finds itself lacking in defense, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's another 60 GP, and we get to watch Donkey Kong as he flexes his tie in front of the viewers. Censorship at its finest, folks. So that about does it for the Phantom Showcase. I'd like to thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to check out the next part when they come out. Next part when they... Pluralisms, am I right? Check out the next parts when they come out, and the previous parts if you haven't already. And until next time, that is Ross, signing out. Goodbye.